We believe we stand at the peak of human achievement. Satellites circle the planet. Algorithms predict behavior. Machines build machines. Every generation is taught the same quiet assumption that progress only moves forward, that knowledge accumulates, that once something is learned, it is never truly lost. But history does not support that belief. Because scattered across the ancient world and buried inside our own modern era are technologies that worked perfectly, were relied upon, and then vanished. Not destroyed in war, not erased by catastrophe, not stolen by invaders. They disappeared because the knowledge to build them stopped being passed on. The structures remain, the artifacts remain, the effects remain. The instructions do not. This is not a story about magic, not a story about aliens, not a story about myths misunderstood. This is the story of human knowledge that slipped through our fingers. And once you see the pattern, it becomes impossible to unsee. Start with something so ordinary that no one questions it. Concrete. Modern civilization is built on it. Roads, bridges, tunnels, towers, entire cities are poured, stacked, and reinforced with concrete. And yet, the most durable concrete ever produced was not made in the modern age. It was made over 2,000 years ago. Roman concrete still stands today. Harbors submerged in seawater for millennia. Breakwaters battered by waves, salt, pressure, and time. Modern concrete crumbles in decades. Roman concrete hardens with age. For centuries, engineers could not explain why. It wasn't until modern scientists examined it at the microscopic level that the truth emerged. Roman concrete wasn't just strong, it was alive. Volcanic ash mixed with lime created a chemical reaction that continued long after the concrete set. When seawater penetrated cracks, it triggered the growth of rare minerals. Those minerals expanded, sealing fractures before they could spread. The concrete healed itself, no polymers, no synthetic additives, no modern engineering software. Just chemistry the Romans understood well enough to use, but not well enough to fully document. There is no complete Roman construction manual preserved anywhere. No standardized recipe, no master blueprint. The knowledge lived in practice, in apprenticeship, in builders who learned by doing. When the Roman system collapsed, the chain broke. For over 1,000 years, humanity produced weaker concrete than the Romans. An empire without electricity, engines, or computers built materials superior to ours, and we forgot how. Now move from stone to steel. Damascus steel was legendary even in its own time. Blades that could flex without breaking, edges that stayed sharp through repeated combat, patterns etched into the metal itself, flowing like smoke or water. Medieval warriors believed these blades were enchanted. They were not. They were engineered. When modern scientists examined surviving Damascus blades, they discovered something startling. Nanostructures. Carbon nanotubes formed naturally during forging. Internal crystalline patterns that gave the steel its strength and flexibility. This was not accidental. It was the result of a precise process. And that process vanished. The original ore sources were depleted. The exact forging temperatures were never standardized. The techniques were guarded by guilds and passed orally. When the last masters died, the method died with them. For centuries, the finest blades in history could not be reproduced. Not because modern science was inferior, but because the instructions were gone. This pattern repeats again and again. Consider a machine pulled from the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, the Antikythera mechanism. At first glance, it looked like corroded debris, fragments of bronze locked in stone. Then researchers realized it was something impossible, a mechanical computer. Built over 2,000 years ago, it used interlocking gears to model planetary motion. It predicted eclipses, tracked lunar cycles, calculated astronomical events with astonishing accuracy. Precision engineering that should not exist according to conventional historical timelines. And here's the most disturbing detail. There's no written record explaining how it was built, no surviving manuals, no references to workshops producing similar machines, which leaves only one reasonable conclusion. This was not a lone anomaly. It was part of a tradition that left no surviving paperwork. Because advanced craftsmanship does not appear fully formed. It evolves, which means other machines almost certainly existed. Machines made of wood, leather, bronze, and iron. Machines that did not survive time. Stone endures, metal rusts, organic materials vanish. What we find is not what existed. It is only what endured. Now move closer to the present. The 20th century, the slide we assume is fully documented. The age of blueprints, photographs, and recorded history. The age we believe cannot forget. And yet, even here, the pattern persists. NASA has openly admitted something that should disturb everyone. They cannot fully recreate the original Apollo spacecraft. Not because it didn't work, not because the science was fake, but because the manufacturing knowledge is incomplete. The original tooling is gone. The engineers are dead. The documentation is fragmented. We know what the Saturn V did. We do not fully know how it was built. Modern attempts to recreate components rely on simulations, approximations, and educated guesses. The technology worked. The knowledge chain broke, even in the most documented era in human history. And this exposes a truth that cuts against everything we are taught. Knowledge does not live in books. It lives in people, in habits, in intuition, in undocumented decisions made on factory floors and in workshops. You can archive blueprints forever, but if no one understands why certain choices were made, the knowledge is already gone. This is why oral cultures can lose centuries of understanding in a single generation. Why guild systems protected secrets and doomed them at the same time. Why written records alone are never enough. Instructions are not understanding. Now widen the lens. After the fall of Rome, Europe did not solely improve. It regressed, road systems decayed, aqueducts collapsed, engineering knowledge vanished. Entire populations lived among ruins they could not replicate. Stone structures towered above generations who had no idea how they were built. This was not a lack of intelligence, it was a lack of continuity. The same pattern appears after the collapse of the Indus Valley civilization, after the fall of the Mayan cities, after the destruction of specialized centers of knowledge. Complex systems require constant transmission. Break that transmission, and complexity collapses. Now consider something more modern. Software. Digital systems feel permanent, but software rots. Source code is lost. Dependencies disappear. Proprietary systems become unreadable. Entire programs critical to infrastructure are maintained by people who barely understand them. Ask any engineer working on legacy systems. They are afraid to touch certain code, not because it is advanced, but because no one remembers why it works. Now ask the question few people like to ask. If knowledge can disappear accidentally, how easy would it be to let it disappear intentionally? You wouldn't need to ban it. You wouldn't need to destroy it. You would only need to stop teaching it. Stop funding it. Stop documenting it properly. Let the experts retire. Do not replace them. History proves this works. Over and over again. Entire technologies vanish quietly. Not in flames, in filing cabinets, in forgotten hard drives, in obsolete formats, in dead careers. This is how knowledge actually dies. Silently. And once the chain breaks, it is almost impossible to restore. Reverse engineering can recover function, but rarely recovers understanding. This is why ancient technologies feel out of place. Not because they were supernatural, but because they were part of knowledge systems that no longer exist. And here's the realization that should unsettle anyone paying attention. We may not be as advanced as we think, not because we lack intelligence, but because we confuse possession of tools with understanding. We use machines we do not fully know how to build from scratch. We rely on systems that only function because the chain has not yet broken. But the chain is fragile, more fragile than we like to admit. Civilizations rise, specialization increases, knowledge concentrates. Then disruption occurs. War, collapse, economic shock, political upheaval. The specialists disappear. And what remains is a civilization standing among the ruins of its own achievements, unable to recreate them. Not because it lacks intelligence, but because it lacks continuity. This is why ancient monuments still confuse us. Why ancient materials outperform modern ones. Why ancient machines feel impossible. Not because the past was magical, but because the past understood something we have forgotten. That knowledge must be protected, not just stored. That skills must be passed, not just archived. That technology without continuity is temporary. And now consider the future. What technologies exist today that will one day be treated the same way? What systems do we rely on that no one alive fully understands? What machines will future historians stare at in confusion, wondering how we ever made them work? The most dangerous technology is not the one that destroys the world. It is the one the world forgets how to build. Because once knowledge disappears, it does not announce its departure. It simply stops existing. And history moves on, standing on foundations that it no longer understands.